Hello, old dogs. This is your host and top dog, Bill Manacero. Today's show is a special rebroadcast of one of our most popular episodes. I'm introducing the show under the banner Best of Old Dogs REI Network Podcast. Well, enjoy.
In a world where jobs are how most people make money, one man, one desire, one challenge dares to break the mold. Welcome to the Old Dogs REI Network, where we don't work for money. Money works for us. Coming soon. Viewer discretion advised.
Welcome to the Old Dogs REI Network, where cash flow is king. Real estate investing, the means, so you can enjoy your retirement dreams. This is the show where we cut right to the chase. No sales pitch, no long monologues, just simple how-to real estate investing advice, so you can earn the passive income you need to enjoy your retirement today. And now, your host and chief old dog, Bill Manacero.
Welcome to the Old Dogs REI Network. I'm your host, Bill Manacero, and this is a show where 50-plussers and anyone else who wants to join us get solid, no sales pitch real estate investing advice to help generate real cash flow. This podcast airs twice weekly on Mondays and Fridays, and if you aren't already a subscriber, go to iTunes or Apple Podcast, type in Old Dogs, spelled D-A-W-G-S, find our podcast and subscribe. Well, we got a great show for you today. I'm real stoked about it. A gentleman who has written a book that talks a lot about the process of growing a portfolio. And I'm talking about Michael Zuber. And his book is called One Rental at a Time. Michael worked in the Silicon Valley since graduating from Santa Clara University over 20 years ago. After wasting time and money in his 20s, he found real estate investing and more specifically, buy and hold rental properties, which we talk a lot about here in the Old Dogs Network, and has never looked back since. Michael focused on his day job, learned his market, and grew his rental property portfolio from a single rental house to financial freedom in 15 years. Now that he no longer has a day job, he shares his story and helps others via his self-published book, I mentioned, One Rental at a Time, available on Amazon, and his YouTube channel, also called One Rental at a Time, which gets daily original content and is growing rapidly. Well, Michael, welcome to the Old Dogs REI Network.
Bill, thank you very much for the invitation. This is always a good time.
That's great. That's great. Well, you've got a fascinating story. Before we kind of dig into the book and some of the specific real estate stuff, we'd like to find out about you. Where you came from, where you were born, and just kind of give us your background.
Thanks. I'm a Silicon Valley kid. I've been here nearly 5 decades. I remember. So I grew up in a city called Sunnyvale, California. I remember when there were cherry orchards literally right behind my community where I grew up. We'd go there and we'd pick cherries and have little cherry wars. We'd throw them at each other like boys do, and just have fun. So I remember when Silicon Valley wasn't the Silicon Valley, and a family of 4 could afford a reasonably priced home for 25 or 30 grand. It's nothing like that now. I was married at a very young age. I was married at 19. That was far too early, right? If you had to do it again, but that really sort of set me on my path. I wanted to support my family, so I went and got a college education. I had to pay for it myself, which meant I went to junior college first. And if you know the Bay Area, I went to De Anza College. From there, I went to Santa Clara University, where I got my undergrad in economics and ultimately got my master's degree in business. and worked in the Silicon Valley my whole life. I was an accountant, interestingly enough, for a very brief time, then made it into the sales arena, and was an individual contributor, first line, second line leader in this software sales space for the last 20 plus years. And, helped raise we have a daughter, and, she's nearly 30 now. So, that's kind of who we are. And, my wife and I are both retired now, and it's all because of buy and hold rental property. So that's a quick bio.
That's great. Well, you're starting to sound like an old dog. I remember when they used to pick cherries back there. That sounds like my story,
Yeah.
But that's very cool. That's very cool. Well, that's a fascinating story, and you just kind of, I want to hear this, sort of how you got involved in real estate, what really sort of got you even thinking about real estate and moving in that direction while you were, working for sounds like a successful Silicon Valley company.
Yeah. So my story of getting into real estate starts with, I don't know, I guess probably like most stories, it doesn't start from a great place. So again, as you alluded to my intro, I wasted my 20s, and part of that time I was day trading stocks. Something that was very common back in 1999 and 2000 was day trading stocks. Today, if you're in it, you might be doing crypto, or you might be doing options or things of that nature. We did that too. And I successfully turned a measly $7,000 into $200,000, or just shy. I think it was 198, and ultimately felt like I was better than Warren Buffett. And lo and behold, the market finally turned against me, and I saw that $198,000 balance in my trading account get all the way down to $40,000 in very short order, and was devastated. And realized I was gambling, realized I was speculating, realized I didn't know what I was doing, and more importantly, didn't have time. What I learned from that exchange is, you have time and you focus in the stock market, you too can learn the market, you too can find stocks that are undervalued. But I was in a career that didn't give me time. I traveled the world in my sales career. I had responsibilities at home for raising our daughter. And again, I felt defeated. So I remember walking into, I think it was a Borders bookstore there on Stevens Creek, and finding this purple book. This purple book is obviously now known as Rich Dad, Poor Dad. And it kind of changed my life because it set me on a new mindset. It didn't tell me how to do anything, but it basically introduced me to the concept of rental properties. And as embarrassing as it is to sound, rental properties was nothing that was discussed in my childhood. I didn't know anybody that owned them. My parents were high school graduates and worked very hard and were fine, but they didn't have anything left over. So there was no talk of rental properties, investments, and things of that nature. So the simple concept of buying a condo in Honolulu by Robert and I think another condo by Kim in Portland or wherever it was eye-opening to me. And I'm like, you know what? I can do that. I can learn a market. I can figure out what value is. I have an accounting degree, and I, at that point, have a master's degree, so I'm comfortable with numbers. So I spent a year looking in the Silicon Valley, which was a mistake. I wasted literally 52 weekends looking for properties because all the books after Rich Dad, Poor Dad said, invest 30 minutes from home. And if you live in the Silicon Valley, that's a joke because nothing has made financial sense here probably for 30 or 40 years, but I didn't know that. So I wasted a year, ultimately getting to a point where we pulled out a California map on the table with the wife and I and said, okay, nothing works here. Where can we go? And, long story short, we found Fresno, California, or Central Valley. It's about 2.5 hours one way from our home. And we found our first house on Norris Drive for $107,000 that rented for $1,100. And that started our journey way back in 2002.
Wow, that's amazing. and did you see the drive? What would be the drive? About a 2-hour drive, 3-hour drive?
2.5 hours.
2.5 hours.
101.99, 101, 152, 99. It's a relatively easy drive, but yeah, 2.5.
Right. Was this a single family home?
It was, yeah.
Yeah. And so you bought it. Did you have to do anything to it, rehab it or anything, or was it ready to go?
In hindsight, it was probably ready to go, but we were like a lot of new investors. We insisted on painting it when we didn't need to. We probably replaced carpets when we didn't need to. I think we spent like $4 or $5 grand, making it quote unquote rent ready, not knowing what we'd gotten into. And again, we didn't know. I mean, we put 20% down just because that's what you did back then. And we had a property manager, so we've never self-managed. Right, 2.5 hours is a long way away. So we just we jumped in with both feet.
And it's okay. So you bought it the traditional way with the 20% down, and then you all of a sudden you're landlord, right?
Yep.
Was it? I mean, were you in a good area of Fresno? Was it a It
was a B.
Okay.
It was a good working class neighborhood. Yeah, Fresno. They're back then. This is again 2002. Yeah, Fresno is still an area where there's lots of kind of B class neighborhoods. So yeah, it was definitely a B class neighborhood.
So you started in 2002. So this was way prior to the recession, right? So did you have a plan in mind, like, well, we're going to buy a house a year? You're gonna build up enough equity until you can get another? I mean, what was sort of your strategy at that point?
Yeah, I wish I could tell you I had a big plan. My whole plan was, if I could get to 4, I believe that in 50 years we would be better off financially, right? All I was thinking about, because again, I just suffered a $150,000 loss in the stock market. All I saw my parents do was work their tail off, their whole lives. So I just wanted to have a better retirement. That was really my goal. And my goal was if I could get to 4, we could be better off. It obviously grew a lot from there, but that was it. That was the goal.
And were you and your wife both working full time?
Yes.
Oh, okay. So you had 2 incomes to deal with there, which I'm sure helped out too. Were you setting money aside on a regular basis to sort of save for the next house, or how did you, how did you sort of get the funds together to buy that next rental?
So we had that $40,000 I referenced earlier, and that actually was enough to fund our first 3 purchases. We kept trying. Basically, what we started to do was cut our expenses, because we were like a lot of people. We basically lived on our income. We spent money foolishly. So the $40,000 allowed us to get the first 3. It was 20 grand on the first, 10 on the second, 10 on the third. That's the 40 grand. We filled the operational and make ready costs out of our incomes, or small savings. And then the next 4 or 5 properties we purchased were all cash out refinances. So the first property we bought in 2000.
To property 2 and 3. Now, how were you able to get in at 10,000? Were they that much less in cost, or were you able to get lower downs?
Lower downs, 80-10-10s, 80% first, 10% seconds, and 10% equity. This was back in the days when Countrywide and IndyMac were running around with all these interesting first and second mortgages. So yeah, we bought a second one for another $100,000 house, rented for $1,100. It was 80% first, 10% second, and 10% equity. And we did that on the third house as well. So that's how the first 40 grand was invested.
Gotcha. Over what time period did that happen?
3 houses were about 18 months from the first to the third.
Oh, okay. Gotcha. Now, when you're looking for these houses, did you have certain criteria in mind? How did you determine which house to buy?
So area was the most important. I chose an area and zip code in Fresno to focus on, and I didn't leave that for the first 4 or 5 years. It was 93703, often called the Mayfair District. That was kind of bread and butter, 3-bedroom, 2-bath, 1-story homes built in the 80s. It felt like the area I grew up in, so I felt very safe there. So Fresno is 1 million people, and I looked at a footprint that was probably a square mile. So I was very laser focused. I only looked in that zip code. I looked for the 1% rule back in the day. I don't use that today, but that's where I started. And, when you look at it every day, which I've now done for 20 years, you can find little holes in the market. Maybe you find a 3-bedroom, 2-bath that has, an extra 200 square feet because there's a living room, dining room combo that maybe you can create a 4th bedroom, or, you can start to find holes or opportunities in the market when you stay focused. And that's what we did, right? In house number 2 and 3, I believe we bought both as 3 bedrooms, but we ended up converting and renting them both as 4 bedrooms because you add a closet, a wall, a door, and bingo bango, you have a 4-bedroom that you can rent. So that's what we did in the very early days.
Were you using a broker or an agent?
Yeah, we bought everything. Everything we bought was out of the multiple listing service, now called Realtor.com or Zillow. We used agents. We had no special access, no door knocking, no mailers. Again, we never lived in our market. We didn't know anybody. So we just made phone calls. We talked to listing agents all the time, and we just grew our network, slowly but surely.
How did you find your property manager?
Oh, that's a story. Badly. We fired the first 5. So, not a great experience. We found the first one because the agent we found was also a property manager, and that turned out to be horrible. And then, we found a bigger one that didn't grow with us, and another one that retired. And it's hard. Finding a property manager in a city you don't know is tough. I would tell a new investor today, don't do what we did, right? We bought a property before we had a property manager, which kind of puts us in a tough spot. I would spend time up front while you're learning a market to identify a property manager, so you have at least somewhat of a relationship. We literally were in escrow and didn't have a property manager yet. So we were, we put ourselves in a bind, in hindsight, that we shouldn't have.
Yeah, well, I went through the same thing. I went through a lot of property managers, and I'm only out-of-state investor. It's not like I can drive to check on what the problem is. But okay, so you bought these first ones within that's pretty tight period, within 18-month period. Okay, so after you used up that $40,000, then you started doing sort of cash out refis. Were they picking up a lot of equity at this time?
Yeah, that's the beauty of investing in California, is it's a very cyclical market. You can go back and look at California in 2003, 4, 5, and 6, which were the years I started our journey. And we had, Fresno specifically, had a couple of years back to back where appreciation was north of 20%. You could look up, and I'd ask your folks to pause this podcast after I give them the address, and go look up on Zillow. The first house we bought was at 1818, so 1818 Norris Drive, Norris Drive East, 93703. You can see in Zillow right there, we bought for 107, and not 3.5 years later, we ended up selling it for 264.
Wow, that's amazing.
And before we sold it at 264, we did a cash out refi. So that first $40,000, which was the first 3 houses, we then did cash out refis on 2 of the 3, which got us our next 5 houses. Mm-hmm. So we're now at 8. We're at 6 houses in a duplex, so 8 doors. I want to be as accurate as possible. So 6 houses in a duplex, 8 doors. And at the time, we're trying to buy what would ultimately...
What year number was that?
That would be the year we sold Norris Drive. So it must be 2006. So it's about 4 years after we started.
Okay.
And I'm trying to buy the 9th property, right? I'm trying to buy the next cash flow house. But here's the problem. That house on Norris Drive that we bought for 107 and now could sell for 264 still rented for 1,100. There's no way that cash flows. It's just upside down.
Right.
So I'm trying to buy a 9th property in that market and getting frustrated and looking. And we go to a real estate meetup, and this speaker talks about small multifamilies. And I'm like, I only thought millionaires could afford apartments. I never even looked at an apartment, right? I found a duplex by accident because they were actually 2 houses. And I thought I was, I didn't even know they were on 1 APN. And so then we started looking at multifamily. And ultimately, we buy a 5-unit property that rented for $3,000 total. We ended up buying it for $220, and we ended up selling Norris Drive for $260, and it rented for $1,100. And again, we didn't sell; we did a 1031 exchange. So we went from 8 doors to 80 doors via the 1031 exchange in about a 2-year period. Again, no new capital, all exchanges out of houses into apartments.
Wow. And were you, as you got into apartments, were you starting to sell off the single family homes?
Well, again, we did turn 1031 exchanges. So all the houses went away via a sale, and we 1031 the money into apartments.
Okay.
So we captured all of that equity on that Norris Drive property.
Okay, that's awesome. So what kind of apartments were you buying? What size apartments?
So we bought small, right? They were all commercial. And if you don't know, commercial starts at 5 units. So that first property we bought on Vassar was 5 units. Then we bought a 10, a 13. The largest we own is 20. So we own a couple of 18s and stuff. So yeah, we just small. Well, yeah, I would call them small, but maybe they're big to others. But yeah, that's what we did. We got out of houses because they were overpriced, and they were remarkably overpriced. That house on Norris Drive we sold for 264. Even today is only worth 201, and it's 15 years later.
Wow.
So they were remarkably overpriced.
Yeah, well, that definitely got hit by the recession, you didn't quite make the recession yet by the time you got all these properties, right? Or was it just starting?
No, so we got out. We did the last 1031 exchange a couple of months before the crash takes over and the recession hits, the Great Recession. So the interesting thing about the Great Recession is, yes, our net worth was hit, which, real estate got hit hard, right? Even apartments got hit. But what happened is our cash flow went through the roof, because as people were leaving houses, they needed somewhere to rent. And we saw better quality of tenants, higher rents across all of our units as the Great Recession, journey started. So we survived the Great Recession quite well sitting in apartments.
And what about your single families?
We didn't have any single families.
Were they all gone by that time? Okay, so it's all apartments at this time. Wow.
Yeah, we 1031'd out of the houses into apartments.
Wow, they talk about the nick of time there. And you didn't have any of those crazy loans on those single families, did you? That the others that, the people that got stuck?
No, the 2 and 28s, all of that. No, we didn't have any of those loans. My mental brain would not let me go, yeah, well, it starts at 0.9%, but 2 years later it resets at 9.9. And yeah, none of those loans made sense to me.
Right. It was good you had the accounting background there. So, that's great. Wow. And so now these are all in the same zone of Fresno that you purchased the multifamily as well? Wow.
Yeah, I mean, it started to expand slightly, but yeah, they were all within 2-mile drive, maybe 2.5.
And were they older buildings? And now most of your single family you said were 1980s and stuff.
Yeah, these were a little bit older, probably. I'd have to go back and look. I think some of them were in the 60s and 70s. They were older for sure. They were old 1-bedroom, 1-bath, 2-bedroom, 1-bath, kind of, B, C plus areas.
And so at this time, then you had how many doors total?
80 when we ended that part of the cycle.
Okay. And then the recession hits. And now are you actually, you mentioned the cash flow, were you able to increase rents? Or was it just because you had a steady cash flow that it was strong?
Yeah, rents went up during that period. And again, a lot of people have talked about it is, hey, when a recession hits, apartments do great. I don't know if that's statistically true for all recessions, but the Great Recession, that was absolutely true. Because what happened is a lot of people were pulled out of apartments and put into houses they couldn't afford via liar loans, and then they boomeranged back to apartments. So occupancy went up, rents went up, bad debt went down. It was a pretty good time to be a landlord of apartment units, 2007, 8, 9, 10.
Now, are you still working at this time?
Absolutely, yeah.
Okay, so you're still working your full-time jobs, and now you got 80 units. Did you have the same property manager managing all your properties?
Right about that time, we likely split our portfolio. I don't remember it exactly, but there was a time in our career for 3 or 4 years where we didn't want to have that single point of failure. So we were dividing our portfolio. We didn't go down to a single property manager until like 3 or 4 years ago.
Okay, gotcha. So you're trucking along. You got 80 units, which is awesome, and are you still moving forward? Are you buying? Yeah, because now I would imagine there'd be some great discounts out there. Especially 2009, 2010. What were you doing at that time?
We were very aggressive. The beauty of learning your market and looking every day is you can see things that other casual viewers miss. A lot of people will never realize that 2010 was the absolute best year to buy cash flowing real estate in the state of California. Most people were scared. But because we'd been looking every day, we knew what was going on. We bought more houses in 2010 than we bought in a year. We started using hard money, private money. We borrowed against our 401k. We put loans on our cars. We did everything we could because the last thing we wanted to do was repeat mistakes of other crashes. Lots of people write about real estate crashes, the S&L crash or the oil crash in Texas, and they're like, I wish we bought more. And that was something Olivia and I would never want to do, right? This was going to be our one time to strike. So we did everything we could to close on every transaction we could. So we were very, very, very aggressive.
And the traditional lenders weren't lending at all, right? I mean, at that time, or at least if they were, it was really hard to get.
Not to us.
Yeah. So going hard money and just trying to tap into other sources. Did you ever bring in private money?
Absolutely, yeah. What we found is once you started documenting what we did, a lot of our friends, again, we happen to live in the Silicon Valley. A lot of my network is salespeople who on occasion can have good W-2s or good income. They were earning less than 1% in the bank, and we had a deal structure where we would pay 10%, put them on first, name them on insurance, give them all the security in the world. And we borrowed millions of dollars in private money during 2010, 11.
That's awesome. And what did you acquire? What were you buying bigger or buying about the same?
We bought everything we could. We bought a bunch of houses. So the market fell apart last time kind of in waves. It started in houses, then went to small multis, and then went to actually commercial. So we were very active in single families until Wall Street came in. Then we were buying small residential, 2s through 4s. And then, we bought a 10 unit, another 10 unit, an 18 unit. We bought an 18 unit, zero down, like people always talk about. We did it. And we bought directly from a bank.
How did you do that deal?
So an owner of the 18 unit building sold it in 2006 at the peak for $1.4 million, carried the note. That person, the borrower, had a tough time keeping up with the mortgages, ultimately had to be foreclosed. The owner of the building was very old at this point and said he wanted out. We walked the building together at the time, and it was destroyed. And I told him, there's $100,000 in work required. He agreed, and we agreed on a price. And I said, well, you know what? I'll put $100,000 in escrow for the repairs, but I can't give you anything down. And he said, okay. And we just did the deal.
Did he continue to carry the paper or no?
Yep, with me. Yeah, with us. Yep.
Oh, it did. That's great. Wow. So you're starting to get pretty savvy, it sounds like. I mean, from the early beginnings. That's awesome. So you're growing at what sort of, I don't know what point you would kind of slow down. I mean, there was a certain point where you quit your work, right? And when did that happen?
So my wife quit in 2014, I believe, and I quit in 2018.
Got it. And so at that point, you were generating enough in cash flow to retire. I mean, right, is basically it.
Mm-hmm. Oh, for sure.
Oh, that's awesome. Are you still actively pursuing properties, or sort of where are you at in that regard?
Yeah, the beauty about being a real estate investor is the skills you have. The market changes all the time. I'm always active. I think we added 3 or 4 units last year, and last year was a slow year. 2020 was rough, just no inventory, no deals. But yeah, we're always growing. We're still growing. We're still having a good time. We still do owner finance deals where they make sense. We still make offers on the MLS, but we're picky, as you might imagine. But yeah, we know a market. We still think being a landlord is a good thing, even though, California is not landlord friendly. But I think if we do good tenant selection, we treat them right, that, more often than not, good karma wins. So yeah, we're still growing.
Wow. Well, that's a fascinating story. Kind of looking back from the beginning, obviously there had to be some mistakes that you learn from, right? It's not a bad thing. Mistakes are actually good because they help us to become better. But what would you say your biggest mistake was, in this process?
Well, I guess one of the stories people like to hear about it, and it is in the book, is our first tenant. Right? Remember that first house we bought? It doesn't end well. And there's kind of a lesson in there. So we do everything right: credit check, reference check, criminal records, first and deposit, all of that. But what didn't happen is we didn't realize that the family that moved in was about to be divorced or separated or whatever the right word is. And they moved in, and within 2 weeks, the wife was gone. She moved to New Mexico or someplace. We never hear from her again. And the husband, who's now in our brand new rental that we're so excited to have, decides to quit working, quit paying his rent, and become a professional alcoholic. And of course, we're in the lovely state of California, which means that he got to live in our place for about 75 days paying no rent, and and destroyed our house to the tune of almost 15 grand in repairs.
Oh, gee.
So that was a painful experience. The good news is after 20 years and thousands of tenants, I have 2 of those stories. It's a shame that it happened in our first one, but I remember going in that property and, nearly breaking down and getting back in the car, because again, remember, 2.5 hours away. So we have to drive 2.5 hours, not knowing what we're going to get into, get out of the car, look, just upset. And Olivia looks at me and goes, "Did we do anything wrong?" And we're like, "No, we did this, we did that, we did this, they got divorced, and, he's not happy about it." And I go, "Well, what do you want to do?" I fully expected her to say, "Sell it." Because again, remember, we don't know Fresno. It's a first experience. It's a horrible experience. Right. And she goes, "Okay, let's do the next one." I'm like, "Oh my God, are you serious?" I'm like, "I'm shocked. Thank you so much." But, obviously that house goes on to be a huge success for us. The next tenant moves in, never misses rent. It appreciates 150 grand in the span of 3 years, and has produced, a building that we still own today. And, it has a great story. So the first thing is, bad stuff happens in real estate. Real estate's a people business. I thought it was an Excel spreadsheet business. It's absolutely not. It's a people business. So realize that. So bad things happen. And the other story I have for you is about year 9 or 10. We have 80, maybe even 100 units at this point. And we just left a housewarming party for one of my employees. So somebody reported to me, just got a big old house in the Bay Area. And again, we're living in a condo that we bought decades ago. And I remember pulling over just crying, distressed. I'm like, "Honey, why don't we have that?" Not knowing that, they signed up for a huge mortgage payment and their life's creep, and he's going to have to work forever. So sometimes you just need to remind yourself that financial freedom is a long journey. Our journey, as we document in the book, is 15 years. And at year 9, I almost gave up. And that would have been a shame, right? If we would have sold our condo, bought a house, I probably would have had to work another 15 years. And sometimes you get really close and you just forget that you're almost there. So there was a couple of points in our career that we almost veered off, and it almost doesn't end well. But thankfully Olivia was there to set me straight and make sure we stayed on track together.
That's awesome. Now, what would you say is sort of biggest success? So what one key thing, event, action, what have you, that really made a difference in your investing?
The biggest thing I've come to appreciate after coaching and helping people all this time is once I get focused on something, I do the work. And I can proudly say after 20 years, I still look at my market every day. So I can see the subtle changes. I can see the inventory rising or dropping. I can see prices rising or dropping. I can see quality difference. The clean stuff sells fast. The old stuff doesn't sell. I can tell you what's overpriced, underpriced. I can find value. And the only way you could do that is if you look at your market. It doesn't take a lot of time. It takes 10 or 20 minutes a day, right? I started, like I said, very early on in what's called the Mayfair District, 93703. If you look at that market every day for 3-bedroom, 4-bedroom houses, it doesn't take that long. You can't learn Fresno, which is 1 million people, but you can learn a subsegment of one part of Fresno. So that's what you have to do. I've looked at my market, and the market certainly for me has grown over time, but that's because I've gotten it. But yeah, in the hindsight, that's my superpower, is I was very focused. I didn't get distracted. If I was focused on the Mayfair, I didn't look at other parts of Fresno. I did not look at other parts of California. I did not look out of state. I did not look at multifamily until the time was right. I looked at 3-bedroom and 4-bedroom houses in the Mayfair District for years before I looked at anything else.
And do you recall how you initially discovered the Mayfair section of town?
I asked 3 or 4 people in the area what was middle class, and they all said the Mayfair. So that's where I started. Awesome.
Wow, that's amazing. Well, we have, folks, our show is called the Old Dogs REI Network, and, we really target that group that is like 50 years of age and older. Some are approaching retirement, and they're, trying to figure out if they have what they want to have for the retirement that they have dreamt of. And then there's those that are already retired that, maybe they're just, either they need additional cash flow, maybe they got a nest egg and they want to try to get good returns on it. What kind of advice would you have for that audience and those folks regarding real estate investing and how you might advise them to get involved?
Yeah, so I would tell you, assuming your time horizon is, longer than 5 years, so you don't have a terminal illness or, something that, where you only think you have 5 years left. If that's all you think you have left, go enjoy life. Don't bother with rental properties. But assuming, my hope is most of you believe you're going to live longer than 5 years. I believe being a buy and hold landlord today is a great idea. You learn your market. You can get remarkably cheap interest rates. If you're in your 50s or greater, you're going to get interest rates that you used to get in your savings account on 30-year debt. And maybe for you, maybe you want 15-year debt. There's nothing wrong with that, right? If you're in your 50s and you see yourself working for another decade, you know what? What's wrong with getting 4 properties, putting 30 or 35% down, and getting a 15-year loan, right? That way, when you get to year 10, most of it's paid off. Maybe you sell one and pay off the others, just so you have more financial freedom and flexibility when you are done in your 60s. I think rental properties are great because the debt is cheap, it's tax advantage, it appreciates both in value and in rent. It's an inflation hedge, it's a dollar hedge. If I was in my 50s making 6 figures a year and my kids were already out of the house, I would strongly recommend getting a B plus area, getting a 15-year loan, putting a little down so it still cash flows at least a little. And just know you have, another forced savings account that, oh, by the way, given the fact that we're printing 12% of GDP in 2020 and likely going to do it in 2021, you know what? Having stuff that's protected from inflation is probably not a bad idea.
Yeah, that's great. Great advice. Do you have a certain target per door that you seek for all of your properties?
I did in the beginning. I think it's very risky now, and it takes you to worse areas of town. Now what I do is I tell people to figure out what the average return is in your market. I call it yield. So for example, in Fresno today, the average yield is 6%, which means if I'm looking for a cash flow deal, out of pocket, closing costs, make ready, and then expected yearly cash flow, it's 6%. So what I do is I look for deals that are higher than that. I only want to do deals that are 7 and 8%. I believe every market in the country has an average. Some of them are higher. Maybe Ohio's 10%, maybe Michigan's 11. I don't know. But the idea is, I think if you go spend the time learning your market, what I call doing the work, you figure out what average is first for your market. And then what you do is you only do deals that are better than average. You don't have to say yes to everything. Like Warren Buffett says, treat it like a punch card. Your punch card has 4 spots on it or 10 spots on it. You don't have to say yes to the first 4 or the first 10. Do the work, do your homework, learn your market, and then do good or great deals.
How are you finding out what the local return is for your market?
I do the math, frankly, and I've been doing it for years. So purchase price, down payment, closing costs, make ready. That's the denominator, right? That's cash out of pocket. Then it's monthly rent minus all the expenses, mortgage payments, tax, insurance, property manager, reserves, so on and so forth. That produces a monthly cash flow times 12. That's your yearly cash flow. You take the yearly cash flow divided by the denominator of out-of-pocket cash, and that's a percentage. So if you do that, across dozens, if not hundreds of properties, you'll figure out what average is. And then your deal is to only do deals better than average. So it does take work. It takes you 60 or 90 days to figure out what average is, but it's well worth the effort. I don't suggest walking into a casino and saying, hey, I'm going to pick 12 or 17 on the roulette wheel. I think you should do your work. I think you should be prepared. I really do think you need to learn your market, and it's 10 to 20 minutes a day, but it's every day. I don't think you do it 4 hours on Saturday. I think you do it to 10 to 20 minutes a day. You see what comes on, you see what comes off, you see what sells, what has the price drop, and you just start to figure it out.
Great stuff. Great stuff. Wow. Well, it seemed like you're not slowing down here at all. And so what's your long-term play, and what kind of excites you about the future?
The exciting thing right now as we sit here in early 2021 is I think I'm going to repeat the cycle that was in my book that we talked about earlier, where we went from 8 to 80. I think we're at a unique time where multifamily is actually in trouble. I think, and again, we own some of these, so I can say that with certainty. Vacancies are up, rent collections are rougher, rents are going down in multifamily. But given the debt structure, a lot of that pain won't show up for years. Then you flip the coin over to single family homes, and there's a lot of pluses going on. You've got urban flight, you've got millennials becoming buyers, you have new development increasing, which will pull up existing home sales. You still can get interest rates in the 2s, certainly in the 3s for 30-year fixed rate money. So what I'm doing today is I'm going to buy as many single family homes as I can in the next 12 to 36 months. And then I will do what we did in the book. I will 1031 exchange out of overpriced houses into multifamily that is now suffering. So I'm going to repeat phase 1 of our book for the next 2 to 3 years.
Interesting, really interesting. Do you see prices taking a dip yet? I mean, are you going to buy at current prices, or are you waiting for the decline there?
You got to be, I don't think there is a decline coming, at least not in the near future. Now, that's not for every market. Like San Francisco, big trouble. New York, big trouble. But again, I think the tertiary markets, the non-urban cores, are going to do well. I think the millennial buyers are real. I think owner occupants are real. I think Class A renters don't want to live in Class A apartments anymore. I think we've seen a fundamental shift in work from home. So I think space is good, and single family homes equals space and options and work from home, and teach your kids in home, and your gym is now your home, and your movie theater is now your home, and nobody wants to live in an apartment if you can avoid it. So I want to go where the action is, and I think that's single family homes, non-urban core.
That's fascinating. It's like one of the first people I've heard say that. That's really insightful. Of course, California is a bit of an anomaly too. I don't know that you're going to see the same kind of equity play that in Ohio or some of the Midwest or southern states.
Yeah, I don't know. I can only profess to know the market that I know. I would tell you that my guess. I was asked one time on a national show what I thought appreciation would be for 2021. And again, that's a national number, so it takes the ups and the downs. And I said over 8%.
Wow. That's a huge jump, actually.
Yeah, and it was 14% in 2020. So some people will go, "Oh my God, it's a slowdown." Well, yeah, it's a slowdown from 14, but it's there's some people talking about a 30% price decline, and I just don't see how that mathematically happens. It just won't happen, at least not in 2021. Right.
Wow. Well, this has been such an amazing show. I think that some of the insights in your book. I mean, maybe there's some tips you might want to relay that can be found in your book that might be helpful to our audience.
Yeah, really the book I think is divided into 2 parts. The first section is just a summary of our 15-year journey. I wrote that kind of like, hey, you read Rich Dad Poor Dad, now what? Because there was no how-to in that. So the first half of the book is about 60% of the pages is, here's our journey, the good and the bad. I tell you about the ups and the downs and the mistakes and the wins the whole time. Talk about the money, the buys, all of that. And then the other 40% are just our lessons learned, things we recommend, things that, if we had to do over, we would. It's just an honest reflection. It's just a self-published guy. I just put it up on Amazon. So I am pleased that there's 406 5-star reviews. I'm really proud of that. And it's quite an honor to have written that book and see how it's helped people.
That's great. Do you have, templates or things like that in there, the guides for, new investors?
No, it's not a how-to book.
Okay.
No, it's not. It's just a story of. It's meant to create belief and confidence. It's not a how-to book. Gotcha.
It's good to know. Well, we have to our segment called Wrap It Up, which is basically an opportunity for you to share resources that have been of value to you with our listening audience, and they can pick up some maybe good ideas, good resources out there that might help them in their real estate efforts. So if you're ready, we can wrap it up. All right, first question: favorite real estate book?
The Real Estate Millionaire by Gary Keller. It's a blue and white book. I love that book for what it was, but the most valuable part for me there is the last 30 or 40 pages were case studies of real estate millionaires. Because what I found most difficult in my journey was finding other investors that had full-time jobs. Because that's who I was. I was a full-time employee, and that was where my income come to buy and repair my stuff. So that book really was important to me.
That's great. Great recommendation. How about just a favorite general business book?
Perhaps the most favorite book I've read is one that's 20 years old or so called The American Capitalist. It was one of the first unauthorized biographies of Warren Buffett.
Oh, wow. Awesome. Great. How about the most valuable website for success?
Well, so in the beginning, it would have to have been Bigger Pockets. I think it's now become a very marketing kind of engine. I don't go there all that much. Today, it's probably YouTube, probably.
Yeah, YouTube's amazing. You can find anything you need to do. You want to do a home repair or whatever it is. People have their phone with their car hoods up trying to figure out what's wrong with their car. I mean, it's amazing.
Yep.
How about favorite app on your phone?
So I built all my searches and queries in Realtor.com.
Okay. And take your phone with you when you're
Yep.
shopping around? That's awesome. Do you ever sort of drive for dollars when you're in your neighborhood? Just drive up and down looking at neighborhoods and look for maybe properties that are a little depressed in a B area, that kind of thing?
Nope. No. I don't have time for that.
Okay. All right. Just curious. How about a favorite quote?
Again, probably Warren Buffett. He's kind of one of the guys that I've always followed is you only find out who's swimming naked when the tide goes out.
That's great. Great one. And this one here, which doesn't sound like you've had to deal with this, but if you lost everything, all your assets, and you had to start all over, knowing what you already know, and you only had $1,000, what would you do to launch a real estate investing business with that $1,000?
Again, I think I would just keep that in the bank. I would actually pick up my phone and start networking with people. Real estate investing is a networking business. I would call every real estate agent. Like, for example, I would once again focus on an area. Let's just use Mayfair District. I would call every agent who had a property listing in the Mayfair, tell them who I am, what I'm looking for, and I would just grow my network that way. So I would save the $1,000 as probably would become earnest money deposit on a deal that I would try to put together.
You would have to do a down payment, or would you try? I guess you'd have to.
I would try to get
investors.
I would try to either get investors, or I would try to find out owner financing. I would basically, I would not use the $1,000 for marketing. I would use it to try to lock up a deal. And again, I would either get investors, private money, or use it to, use it as some down payment on a seller financing deal.
Got it. This is great stuff. Great stuff. Yeah, I'm sure that the folks that are listening would love to find out more about you or your book, or what would be a good way for folks to do that?
Yeah, so you can find the book on Amazon. Just look up One Rental at a Time. It's also on Audible if you'd rather listen. I finally put it on Audible. The best way to follow me is I put out daily original content on my YouTube channel. And of course, it is called One Rental at a Time.
Excellent. Well, man, this has been absolutely awesome. I think that, I just kind of like how you just kind of just talk the average guy here, and you make it sound easy, and I think that's good, because I think people need to know. I mean, it isn't necessarily easy. It does take a lot of hard work and time, but it's your persistence, I think, that really stands out more than anything. And like you said, you could have given it all up 8 years in, but thanks to your wife, you were able to push forward, and I'm sure you haven't regretted that. So that's awesome. Wow. Well, we have a tradition here at the Old Dogs Network here, where we have our guests close us out with their best old hound dog howl. And my best friend lives near Fresno, right up there, so I know they got dogs around there. And so are you ready to do this? Just close us out with your best hound dog howl. All right. That was great. Wow. Well, I can't thank you enough for being on. This is a great material, great information, and sound like a great guy.
Thanks, Bill. I appreciate it. Let me know when it comes out.
I sure will. Also, I want to thank all our old dog listeners out there for joining us. I know there's a lot of other things you could be doing right now, but the fact that you've taken the time to join us means a lot, and we really appreciate it. Please note everything we discussed today on the show. All the details, references are accessible in our detailed show notes at the Old Dogs website at olddogsreinetwork.com/blog. And you're going to look for the episode with Michael Zuber. Well, that's the show for today. Remember, cash flow is king and real estate investing the means. Until next time, keep moving forward and may God bless.
Thank you very much for visiting the Old Dogs REI Network. We would greatly appreciate if you would stop by iTunes and let us know what you think of the show. We would love if you could subscribe to the podcast, give us a 5-star rating, and write a review. The more ratings and reviews we receive, the more visible the podcast will be to others. Thank you.